The Smart Access configuration page provides admins with several configurable functions. A choice of three options can be selected to specify whether use of a QR code, a face match, or both methods will be available to users for recognition at the time of check-ins and check-outs. An occupancy threshold option can be enabled to monitor and limit the total number of checked-in users at one or more locations. A group check-in option can be enabled to allow visitors at touch mode devices to input either a count of additional guests who are accompanying them, or if the additional guest name option is also enabled, their first and last names can be entered at the touch mode device. In either case, a defined printer will produce badges for the primary visitor and each additional guest. Labels seen at the client applications can be configured to display the company name and logo, as well as a welcome message, an additional message, and unique titles seen on touchless check-in only or checkout only client devices. User data displayed in user management and edited via the add user and update user functions, as well as in reports and during touch mode check-ins, can be customized to define which fields are visible and/or mandatory. A watch list feature allows selection of one or more countries for which any visitors who have citizenship, as specified during registration, will not be allowed to check in. Currently, under field configurations, first name, last name, and email ID are always mandatory fields, as seen during registration. Admins who intend to select one or more countries in the watch list feature might want to make the citizenship field mandatory. If employee to meet is set to both visible and mandatory, retrieval of employee information requires configuration of the user directory via LDAP or an imported CSV file. Only visitors checking in at touch mode devices can make use of the group check-in feature when enabled by an admin. Only touch mode devices can make use of the employee name lookup feature that's available when walk-in visitors manually register at the time of their visit. The Smart Access client app must be restarted at each client device to see changes saved at the Smart Access configuration page. New features, group check-in and watch list, have been added in the latest version of Smart Access. They impact what is seen on the Smart Access configuration page. The new features will be covered toward the end of this video. All functionality described or demonstrated in the earlier portion of this video is still accurate. On logging into Smart Access, navigate to Settings, System Setting, Smart Access Configuration. At the top of the Smart Access configuration page, in the Select Mode section, we see three options: QR code, face match, and both. With both, recognition by QR code and face match are both supported. If an option of QR code is selected, and one or more users subsequently registers with QR code, face match cannot be selected. Conversely, if face match is selected and one or more users has already registered using face match, QR code cannot be selected. Error messages will be displayed if that's attempted. The occupancy threshold option allows an administrator to enable or disable the ability to monitor and limit the number of occupants at one or more locations. There are several fields here that allow an administrator to customize what is seen on the displays of client devices. 4 of these fields are required fields: company name, welcome message, check-in title, and checkout title. The last 2 of which are unique to touchless mode devices that are configured either for check-in only or checkout only, respectively. Let's have a look at where the 2 required fields, company name and welcome message, will appear on a touch mode client device. The company name appears at the top with the welcome message beneath it. The other 2 fields that can impact a display, company logo and additional message, are also shown on this touch mode device. Note that only touch mode devices can display additional messages. To modify the company logo, click the Upload button An interface opens where drag and drop can be used to bring in a JPG or PNG file. The logo is displayed, and clicking Save will cause that logo to be seen to the left of the company name on all devices when the application is started. If you want to delete a logo, click the red button and click Save. And at this point, you could upload a different company logo if you wanted. Scrolling down, we can examine the remaining sections of the Smart Access configuration page: field configurations and purpose of visit. The fields shown at left can be made visible or visible and mandatory, or neither, by using the checkboxes shown. These are fields that are displayed at a touch mode device at the time of check-in. Notice that first name, last name, and email ID values cannot be modified by admins. They're permanently enabled. But company name, country, citizen, phone number, purpose of visit, and employee to meet fields can be made visible and mandatory, or neither. So again, it's only the first name, last name, and email ID that are always visible and mandatory. Employee to meet is unique in that if both the visible and mandatory options are enabled, you must configure LDAP or a CSV import of employee information. The purpose of visit selections allow you to decide what choices are presented to a user who is checking in with a touch mode device if you have made that field visible and or mandatory. You can delete one of the predefined purposes. You can also add additional purposes of visit to suit your needs. When done, click the Save button. Two of the new features that have been included with the latest release of Smart Access can be seen here on the Smart Access configuration page: Group Check-in Setting and Watch List. The Group Check-in setting is disabled by default. If disabled, check-ins performed by visitors at touch mode devices will proceed as they have in earlier releases of Smart Access. When enabled, an additional option becomes visible, and it too opens in a disabled state initially. In this mode, where the group check-in option is enabled, but the additional guest name subordinate option is disabled, when a visitor checks in at a touch mode device, they will receive a prompt: do you have any additional guests? They're given a choice of answering yes or no. If they answer yes, they will be prompted to enter the number of additional guests. Note that that is the case for group check-in being enabled, but additional guest name disabled. They then click OK. Varying with other options specified here in the admin portal, the visitor may or may not be presented with a health questionnaire or consent that has to be e-signed. The Smart Access client will then display images of the badges that would be printed, both for the primary visitor and for the additional guests. Note that with this set of options, the additional guests' names have not been provided by the primary visitor, and thus those names will not appear on their badges. The primary visitor's name will appear on every badge. If an admin chooses to enable the additional guest name option, group check-ins will still be performed when visitors check in at touch mode devices. But instead of being prompted to supply the number of additional guests that are accompanying the primary visitor, they will be asked to supply the first and last names of the guests. Remember to save your changes here on the Smart Access configuration page and to restart the application at the client devices. To see the impact these group check-in options have on the Smart Access client interface, it's recommended that you view the video called Client Group Check-in. Here, on the admin side, we can go to the Reports page to generate a report where you will see the difference between having group check-in disabled versus enabled without the additional guest names option enabled, and lastly, group check-in enabled with additional guest names enabled. Let's navigate to Reports and select the report name Check-In-Out Report. Accepting the defaults for role, location, and date range, click Generate. For this demonstration, there were only 3 check-ins and check-outs performed today. Here in this report, they are sorted chronologically descending. At the bottom, we see a check-in that was done with group check-in disabled. A little bit higher, we see a check-in that was done with group check-in enabled. And lastly, group check-in enabled with the additional guest names option. If we open the drop list for the second check-in that occurred today, we see a count of the number of additional guests who accompanied the primary guest. The last check-in was done with the additional guest names option enabled, where the guest names entered at the client can be seen. Let's return to the Smart Access configuration page and scroll down to examine use of the watch list feature. Currently, watch list allows an admin to open the Select Watch List drop list and select one or more countries for whom a visitor's citizenship will prevent them from checking in. If we go to the field configuration section, obviously the citizen field must be visible at the time of registration, and it's advisable to at least consider making it mandatory for completion of registration if an admin is going to make use of the watch list. Again, it's an extensive list of every country. In this example, quite arbitrarily, we will select American Samoa. Having done so, with the citizen field both visible and mandatory as shown here. Employees and contractors will remain unaffected, but visitors who register specifying a citizenship of, in this example, American Samoa, will not be able to successfully register or check in. The same impact on registrations and check-ins will occur whether the citizenship field is mandatory or not mandatory. If made not mandatory, yet still visible, which it must be for the watch list to function, a user has the option of not providing citizenship in the citizenship field. In conclusion, the performance of the watch list is dependent on the accuracy of citizenship information provided by visitors at their time of registration.